Hello and welcome to the Daily Space for today, May 14th, 2019. I am your host for today, Dr. Pamela Gay, and I am jet lagged from returning from Hungary. I have to give an amazing and huge shout out at the start of the show to our own Annie Wilson, Binary Ablaze, for covering for me last week. I travel a lot, and normally when I travel, I can keep up with doing the show. But last week I had a double whammy of I got super sick and I was traveling. And Annie was a champ and just stepped up and kept the show rolling. So I just want to give a huge shout out of thanks for all the amazing things that she pulled off for me. So thank you, Annie. You made the show go. So as always, we are here to put science in your brains. Now, some of you may be aware that currently there is a live broadcast of NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine talking with Congress about upcoming plans for NASA to return to the moon within the next 4 years. We have chosen to not cover that live for the very simple reason of it's hard. And so we will be bringing you a summary tomorrow of what came out of today's meeting with highlights, but we won't be bringing the whole thing to you live because we would much rather focus on making the science happen rather than finding out about what budget changes are going to be taking place. Now, on to the science, starting with the moon. Now, as some of you may know, back in the late 60s and early 70s, NASA placed on the surface of the moon a variety of different seismographs, devices that were capable of measuring, well, the things that shake, rattle, and roll on the moon. It was thought at that point that the moon just might be tectonically dead. This means that it is done moving for geologic reasons, that it has become solid all the way through its center. But these seismographs had the potential to measure the passage of waves through that world when it gets struck by asteroids and other space rocks, and to find out if we were right about it being geologically dead. And it turns out we were wrong. Now, the moon isn't geologically active in the same way that the Earth is. Here on Earth, we have a variety of different plates that move side by side, such as with the San Andreas Fault in California. We have plates that plunge underneath one another. This is, for instance, what formed the mountains in the Himalayas. Mount Everest is the result of this kind of a collision. We also have places where the plates are diverging. This explains Iceland. It is ongoing in Ethiopia and many other places. This movement of individual plates across the surface of the planet, and thank you, Susie, thank you so much for the sub. The movement of all of these different plates is what causes all of the different earthquakes that we have going on constantly on our planet, such as the massive earthquake that occurred earlier today in Papua New Guinea. Now, with the moon, the earthquakes that it experiences are more like, well, the shake, rattling, and rolling that takes place inside your oven when you're heating it up to temperature or letting it cool down. Now, you may have heard, like me, various times where either the racks in your oven flexed as they heated and expanded or unflexed as they cooled, creating a rattle in your oven. That thermal expansion and contraction is another form of a quake. And while our moon isn't really getting heated up, it's getting heat, but not getting heated up by the sun, it is losing all of that original heat that it had when it first formed. Like a pie on a shelf, it is cooling from the outside in. And as it does that, just like a pie, its surface sometimes cracks. On the moon, these cracks are what are called faults, lobate scarps, and what they look like is these strange, sinuous features across the surface. Astronomers and planetary scientists going back and looking at the Apollo era data, as we also look at new data that's coming to us from the InSight probe on Mars, have pieced together that our moon is, well, contracting, and we sense those quakes. And using the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, astronomers have been able to match together the locations of those quakes with the fault lines that they can see in the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter images. So while our moon is largely dead, it's not completely dead, which means it's still partly alive. And I feel like there's a need for a Princess Bride quote, but we're going to be good to copyright law today and let that quote simply rattle through your head as we move on to the next science story. And this is a story of solar sails. As many of you may know, the Planetary Society has been looking for ways to improve how we explore our solar system and beyond. And one of the technologies that they have been working to pioneer is the light sail. This will not be their first attempt, but rather their second, with Light Sail 2 launching sometime in June on board the next Falcon Heavy launch. They will, for the first time, trying to do something that, well, thank you, Nebula Cluster, for the bits. Thank you. Oh, my dog knows what that sound means. We are going to say thank you with dog. And with knocking the microphone. So with Light Sail 2, they're going to be launching on board the Falcon Heavy sometime in June. They are going to be part of another spacecraft that was built by Georgia Tech. They will be deployed roughly 7 days after launch. And after they're deployed, they're going to go through regular everyday checkouts. While folded up, this entire spacecraft is about the size of a loaf of bread. It has solar panels on 4 sides, and inside is a mylar-like material that, when unfolded and deployed after they check out the spacecraft for several days, will expand out to be roughly the size, well, they say, of a wrestling ring within their press release. This is 32 square meters of material. With these 32 square meters of material, they're going to catch the sun and look to adjust their orbit, relying just on the transfer of momentum from sunlight to their sails. While photons don't have any mass, they have immense velocity and they carry energy. And we learned from Einstein that energy and mass are proportional to one another, where the constant of proportionality is the speed of light squared. This means that the energy of that light is able to transfer momentum, to give a push to that solar sail. And if successful, they will be able to push their spacecraft, or let their spacecraft get pushed by the sunlight into a higher orbit. This is something that I first understood as a concept from reading stories by Arthur C. Clarke. And today, those science fiction stories that are way older than I am are so close to being made a reality. So we look forward to bringing this to you as much as we can as it happens. The future is now, and sometimes it's kind of cool. Now, continuing on with, in this case, a story of history. It was 84 years ago today that Griffith Observatory and Planetarium opened up on a hill above Los Angeles. This is one of the biggest tourist attractions in the LA area, offering amazing views of the city, amazing views of the Hollywood sign, and of course, amazing views of an artificial sky inside the planetarium because there's a lot of light pollution. With this observatory, Los Angeles became the third major city in the United States, behind New York City and Chicago, to have its own planetarium. In the 84 years since then, 4 generations have grown up learning about space from all of the displays that are available at this facility. And with this facility, there are also 84 years of photos of watching LA grow until now you can see the skyline off, dwarfing the planetarium in the distance. With it has come documentation of light pollution, the not so pretty side of things, but this is still an amazing feat to have spent so many years educating so many people. And our hat's off to you, Griffith Observatory. May you keep doing what you're doing, well, for many more generations to come. There is an octogenarian out there in the planetary community, and that's just kind of awesome. Okay, one more story. And this is a story of something even older than Griffith Observatory. We have been struggling to try and figure out the physics behind the first generation of stars for a long time. And one of the things that we have that constrains our models is observations of the very first stars to have been born after the first generation of stars. And that sounds really confusing, I understand. But that second generation of stars, some of these stars were born with, well, the chemical fingerprint of a single supernova explosion. And this tells us just what elements had to be formed when those first generation of stars died. And one of the constraints that we've had to deal with is the star HE 13272326. This ancient second generation star has an abnormally high amount of zinc in comparison to the other elements inside this star. And what makes this so odd is zinc is formed through what we call a rapid process. It's an R process element. This means that as it forms, the atoms are getting bombarded with neutrons. Well, neutrons have the ability to decay into protons and release energy in other particles, which means that if you take a regular everyday atom and you hit it with neutron after neutron after neutron, all those neutrons will eventually go, and I'm done. And they will stop being neutrons, and suddenly that nuclei will be rich in protons. In this case, those protons became the zinc that we see in star HE 13272326. In a regular, everyday, round supernova, you don't get that type of our process going on in the proportion that we saw relative to other elements. So scientists working at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology worked through what it would take to recreate what they saw. And it turns out what it takes is an asymmetric supernova, such as we show in this image here. These asymmetric supernovae have the ability to channel neutrons in vast jets that hammer away at the cores of atoms, building heavier and heavier elements. Thank you so much, Herleu, for the bits. I have an Eddie right here. Go get it. So now we know one more thing we didn't know yesterday. And this is that first enigmatic generation of stars that we can't yet see, and we can only hope to see maybe with the James Webb Space Telescope. Well, we've constrained what they can be with a set of computer models and the observation of a really weird high zinc star. Now, that concludes all the science I've got for today. So now I will take your questions. And while you type those in, I'm going to remind you to please at CosmoQuestX so I can find them in the chat more easily. And while you type them in, I'm also going to remind you that the Daily Space comes to you every Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, that is 6 p.m. London time. We also have the Sunday Science Hour at the same time every Sunday, brought to you by Annie Wilson, who is working her way through a variety of Hubble Space Telescope images, working to show you how to transform them from the black and white images that come down from the spacecraft into the beautiful colorized images that we see in posters and coffee cups the world over. We are a production of the Planetary Science Institute working in collaboration with Youngstown State University. We are part of a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to exploring our solar system and beyond. When you send bits, when you make donations, when you support us through patreon.com/CosmoQuestX, you are making it possible for us to keep this show going. Thank you so much for everything that you do that allows us to be here. Thank you. And now I'm going to look for your questions. Oh, and this is the point where I realize I lost a window on my computer somewhere. Pardon me while I dig through my windows. There it is. Okay, and I'm sorry for the sniffling in the mic. I'm still recovering from last week's cold. May you never ever get sick when you travel to another country. Okay, thank you, Rose, Warrior Rose. I just saw your bits. Thank you. Scrolling. So Herleu commented early on that the skylight is letting light in nicely, and why isn't Eddie lying in it? It's because Eddie likes the cold. He is a big, very fluffy dog, and he avoids sunbeams this time of year. Hello, Astro B. I love that you say hi. Thank you, Ed Thompson, for the bits. Thank you so much. I love the discussion about sunlight in London. Yes, sunlight in London happens, and the daffodils are absolutely amazing. Hello, Michael, speaking of Great Britain. I'm mostly well, Larry. There's some residual cough that I'm still working on, and I'm sorry that you guys get it in the microphone periodically. Raid those Pell Grants. I'm not sure what that means, but it amuses me nonetheless. Still scrolling for questions. I'm loving all of the emotes out there, folks. So Herleu asks, is the moon turning into a wrinkled, dried out orange on the counter? Yes. Yes, it is. Mercury is doing the same thing, and because it's closer to the sun, it's a little bit more advanced in its shrinkage and cracking. And yeah, this is a thing. This is a thing in our solar system. So J. Sierra asks, is there a place we can see the talk you gave in Hungary? Yes, although I'm going to warn you, my cough meds hit as I was starting my talk. So I left out an entire section of the talk. No one noticed, which is a thing. But yeah, it should be up at craft-conf.com. Let me type in the link for you. I believe you should be able to find it on that website. And I will be slowly pushing some of my photos out. I'm going to upload them into a Google Photos folder and share them. So stay tuned. Stay tuned. So you guys don't have a lot of questions today. Oh, there's one coming in. There's a rumor that the federal government is going to find money to pad the NASA crewed lunar exploration budget by raiding Pell Grant funds, which are for the benefit of public education by people who can't otherwise afford it. Well then. That's wrong. Yeah, that's all I've got. That is just wrong. I hope it's a rumor too, but it wouldn't surprise me anymore. If you live in the United States, make sure you're registered, be prepared to vote, and we need to protect our democracy. And I don't know what the answers are anymore, other than as our government spends less and less to support the people who need it most, it's on us to take care of one another. Do what you can. Yeah, that's all I've got. Okay, I'm going to throw Cheerios to my dogs just because they're cute. Actually, I'm going to invite Eddie up to just eat them out of my hand because we all need a dose of cute. Hey, Eddie, come here. Come here. Come on up. You want this? So, here we go with a dose of cute. Come here. Come on up. Good boy. Good boy. That's all I've got. That's all I've got. Look over here at the camera. Come here. Look over here at the camera. Such a good boy. And I will throw Chet bits so that Stella can get some as well. Thank you, Ruffs Matt. There we go. Eddie does not know his own strength, but he is fabulous. Yesterday, my dogs would not leave me alone because they didn't want me to leave again, and the best way they knew to make sure was to lie on me every time they wanted to sleep so that they wouldn't accidentally wake up and find me gone. I highly recommend pets. They are good for the soul. Okay, so Michael Myers writes, Mayor, I'm having a moment. From what you said about the star that was created from an asymmetric supernova, we have observed only one such star. Isn't it a bit of a leap to generalize from one instance? Yes, sort of. And the reason I say yes, sort of, is this doesn't necessarily mean that all of the supernovae that went off with the first generation of stars were asymmetric. But rather, when we see a star that is made up of a particular fingerprint of atoms that can all be generated through an asymmetric supernova and that are consistent with the explosion of a single asymmetric supernova, it is all right to say that particular star was formed with this specific set of ingredients that can be consistently made with this type of a star that matches the first generation's components and exploded in this particular way. Now, that only tells us about one supernova, but it tells it to us with fairly good constraints. The story matched. Now comes the question of, as we look at more and more of these second generation stars, what diversity of fingerprints do they have? We have a few examples of second generation stars that appear to be made of a mixture of just 2 or 3 supernovae. And we're able to disentangle that because we understand the models for what forms and what ratios so well. It's all a matter of ratios. If you have this, then you have that. And this story seems to fit. But we do need more observations so that we understand that it isn't just one lone asymmetric supernova. Although statistically, it would be really weird if we happened to catch the offspring of the only asymmetric supernova. So this tells us about one kind of event. We don't know how common or uncommon it was, but it's a start, and that's cool. So I'm not seeing any more questions coming in, although I do agree that Oreo flavored Oreos are the best Oreos. We will be back tomorrow. I will be back tomorrow. And that's all I've got for today. We are going to raid Oh Bother. Wait, there's another question coming in. So Herleu is asking, are there any tools to gather temperature data on the moon's core? No. We can start to figure out how much of the moon is solid versus slightly solid, which means kind of liquid, using moment of inertia. If you roll an empty can, a solid can, and a liquid filled can down a ramp, they all roll differently because they have different moments of inertia. In the same way, we can use moment of inertia and rotation and orbits to start to get at what is the distribution of stuff inside of a world. It's not perfect. We then combine this with quake data, which is also not perfect. And that starts to tell us how much is liquid, how much is not, or how much is solid, how much is not solid. Temperature, though, we can't get at that from here. Sorry. And thank you, everyone, for helping out Raven Lillian. Thank you. So Astro B London is asking, what kind of supernova made the solar system and the Earth? It would have been a variety of supernovae, and they are actually starting to think, I saw a paper yesterday or the day before, it's all a blur. International travel does that to my brain. Recently, I read a paper where they were looking at neutron star collisions as being necessary for the formation of the Earth with its high ratio of heavy elements such as gold that appear to be formed through neutron star mergers. So they're even starting to give dates on when that would have occurred. And it's just kind of awesome to see how we're piecing all of this together. So D7V1D asks, does the moon spin like the Earth? Yes, but the rate at which it spins is identical to the rate at which it goes around the Earth. So here, I'm going to use my favorite friend, the angry hamster, as the moon, because he has a face, an angry face. The moon is less angry, but I love my angry squirrel. Okay, so here's angry squirrel. He is the moon. Now, as angry squirrel goes round and round our mug planet Earth, angry squirrel, I'm trying to figure out how to fit this all on camera. Okay, so they're very close. They are very close. So angry squirrel, I think we can all agree, if you see all of angry squirrel has now done a complete rotation. So we've gone face and back around to face. That is 1 day for angry hamster. He's a hamster, not a squirrel. So angry hamster has now rotated like the Earth rotates. Now, the Earth, in this case my mug, rotates really quickly. I'm not going to try and do both the moon rotating and the Earth rotating because I'm certain to drop my mug and break something if I do that. So pretend that our mug is rotating. So as angry hamster goes round and round, the same face is always facing the Earth. This is why we always see the old man in the moon. Now, my arms are about to get tangled, so there. So as the hamster goes all the way around, the Earth only ever sees the face of the moon. But you who are the stars in this particular scenario, the stars get to see all sides of our angry hamster as he goes round and round and round, because he rotates once for every orbit. So yes, the moon does rotate like the Earth. It just does it much more slowly. I like this stuffed animal perhaps a bit too much. So it does rotate like the Earth, it just rotates much slower. And the reason that it rotates much slower is just like our angry hamster. The moon is asymmetric. Now, with the moon, we don't see it as much. The moon, its highest amount of mass is closer to the Earth than its low amount of mass, and we're pulling on it with gravity. And every time the moon tries to rotate away, we yank it back with gravity. And initially, the moon was rotating as it went around quickly, and we would have seen both sides. But over time, gravity just slowly damped that rotation until we always saw the same face. Once upon a time, the Earth had days that were only 15 or so hours long, and the moon rotated much more rapidly and it was closer to the Earth. But everything evolves over time. And if the Earth could live long enough, if the sun wasn't going to eventually someday expand outwards, our moon would yank on us so much that we eventually always faced the same part of the planet Earth at the moon. That's why we have leap seconds periodically. Our Earth's rotation is slowing down. Interactions with the sun are going to wreck things first, but the moon is trying to stop our rotation as well. Oh, Ironheart, I'm glad I could help. And Angry Squirrel is not glad he could help, but I'm glad he could help. So Herleo asks, will tidal impacts change as the moon contracts? What about its orbital path around the Earth? So the moon's orbital path only cares about the velocity at which the moon is going. So as long as nothing changes the velocity of the moon, we're good. It's conservation of angular momentum that causes it to slowly migrate out. So as the Earth's rotation changes, the moon will move a little bit further away. But it doesn't have anything to do with the size of the moon so much. And it shouldn't have any effects on the tides. So Michael, it's a race between the sun interacting because it's so close and thermal things having weird effects, the moon drifting far away, and the Earth getting tidally locked. The models vary, and I don't know which is going to happen first necessarily, but most of the models I've seen recently seem to indicate the sun is going to become a problem before anything else does. And it's unclear how we deal with the sun essentially snuggling right up at the surface of the sun, essentially snuggling up right beside our world. So yeah, theorists are disagreeable on those, and I don't know the order of operations on which happens first. Raven Lillian says, I just got to explain a little science to my 5-year-old nephew. Thanks, Angry Hamster. That's awesome. Yay! Okay. I'm going to go find lunch and work on some coding. Next week, we should be launching a massive new project right here at CosmoQuest, where you will get to help an active spacecraft. So get ready. There's something amazing on its way. So I can't feed all of you. Sorry. Oh, and journey started. The sun is slowly increasing in temperature. So yes, enjoy. DPI 209, you are welcome to share the link to that webcomic. I will see you all later. We are going to raid. Oh, bother. Give him a fabulous CosmoQuest welcome. And remember to awkwardly start the credits. One of these days, Annie or I is going to figure out how to start the credits less awkwardly. It's just not going to happen today. So say hello to Oh Bother, and wherever you are in the world, have a fabulous morning, evening, or afternoon, and get outside and look up. Bye-bye.